Welcome to Minnesota Legislative Report, the region's longest-running public affairs program. Legislative Report is a weekly review of activity at the state capitol featuring lawmakers from northeastern Minnesota. Most importantly, it's an opportunity for viewers to call or email their legislative questions and have them answered live on the air. Minnesota Legislative Report starts now.
Hello and welcome to Minnesota Legislative Report. I'm your host, WDSE News and Public Affairs producer, Greg Grell. Well, it's a busy time for the Minnesota Legislature as important bills take shape before heading into the final weeks of this session. This is your opportunity to call with questions for the lawmakers that represent you. We have two numbers that you can call. Locally, dial 218-788-2844. If you're outside the Duluth area, you can call our toll-free number, which is 1-877-307-8762. Now, when you call, a volunteer will write down your question and bring it to me here in the studio. You can also email your questions to askmlr@wdse.org. Now it's time to introduce the legislators who are joining us in the studio. Starting to my immediate left, it's Representative Erik Simonson, Democrat from Duluth. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Representative Jennifer Schultz, a Democrat also from Duluth. Joining us today, Senator Carrie Ruud, a Republican from Breezy Point, that's in the Brainerd Lakes area. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Representative Mary Murphy, a Democrat from Hermantown. Thanks for being here, Representative Murphy.
Thank you.
I think we'll start with Representative Schultz because you've got an omnibus bill to talk about, and people who don't know or don't follow the legislature closely might not know what an omnibus bill is. So tell us a little bit more about the omnibus state finance government bill and tell people what omnibus bills are.
So this is the bill that will combine many other bills, and it will go forward to the floor of the House. So every committee, this is state government finance, will put together their ideal package of bills and then carry that package forward to vote up or down on the floor of the House. It contains a variety of bills. I think there's over 10 bills in this one, which is smaller than other omnibus bills I've seen, smaller than the Health and Human Services one. And it cuts every committee gets a budget target, and the target for this committee was a reduction of over $9 million from this budget.
And this is state government finance?
This is in the state government finance, so this is the operations of the state government. And so to get to that target, even though we have a $900 million budget surplus, to get to that target, there are things like a hiring freeze of state employees. There is a cap on the number of state employees of around 34,000, I believe. And this is a Republican bill sponsored by Sarah Anderson from Plymouth. And there is a freeze on non-essential travel for government employees, state agencies. And they're eliminating the public subsidy, which is money that goes to candidates, and it especially helps candidates in rural areas that don't have a wealth base to draw from for donations. And it counters big PAC money donations for candidates, and it allows people who don't have their own wealth that can't self-finance a campaign to get some state funding, on average around $5,000. So this is the box you check on your tax returns that says you want some of your tax dollars, not directly from you, but from the state fund, to go towards candidates to run for office, any party that gets enough votes. So that's being proposed to be eliminated. They're also changing contracts for school districts, how they contract for their health insurance, and I know that Education Minnesota is against that change, so I don't know if that's going to get through conference committee. And it was a long discussion. We were in conference committee until about 10:30 last Thursday night, debating this and trying to make amendments to the bill. I tried to amend the automatic voter registration when you get your driver's license or renew your driver's license, but that amendment did not pass that committee.
So what was the issue there that you were trying to amend with the automatic voter registration?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the committee that would hear that bill. None of my bills that would go to this committee got heard, and so I was trying to get my bills heard in committee by offering them as an amendment, so we could discuss them and have people testify in support of them.
Representative Schultz, you mentioned the $34,000 cap on state employees. Do you have an idea how many state employees there are currently?
It's really the number of FTEs, and We debated that in committee, so I don't have an accurate number, but I think it might be a little bit higher than that, so there could potentially be some layoffs. There's a lot of fluctuation because half of the FTEs are funded by federal funding and half from state funding.
Okay.
And some are temporary, so when tax returns come in, Treasury needs to hire more people. So there's just fluctuation. So you need that flexibility in state government. But over the last 10 years, it's been relatively flat, the number of state employees. And if you compare it to the population growth, where we have a very efficient, well-run state government, that really we haven't been hiring to keep up with our population growth.
All right, I want to move to Senator Ruud. And Senator Ruud, you're the Assistant Minority Leader in the Senate, so you're the Assistant Minority Leader of the Republican Caucus. Tell people a little bit what the Assistant Minority Leader does for maybe people that don't know the inside dealings at the legislature.
Well, we have, I think it's interesting that we all sit in the minority.
In the minority,
here,
yes.
You know, I was asked to step up into leadership, and one of my roles is to really communicate with all my caucus members about what's going on, what's in committee, making sure everybody's aware of all the bills that are up every day in committee. Do they have amendments? Because as you mentioned, we don't get our bills heard at all. And so in order for you to get a bill heard, you have to figure out a passageway. And a lot of times that's an amendment, getting people to be like your amendment so that you have the votes in committee. And so, as assistant leader, I just try to make sure that communications are open. And if a member has something that's really important in their community that needs to get done, making sure that those things happen. Usually, the bills we do get heard are bills that have to do with, mostly our bonding bills get heard. Things that are brought to us from our local units of government, our counties and our townships. Those are bills that we typically get heard, because those are things that are important to our district, but to the state of Minnesota also. So making sure that our members' bills are heard or taken care of is kind of my role.
And this is your first time that you're able to make it to legislative report this year. What are some of your priorities from your district this session? I imagine there's some bonding priorities in the Brainerd Lakes area.
Well, of course, many people are aware of the Cuyuna bike trails. Mm-hmm. It's an enormous economic developer. When you talk about reinventing the Iron Range, Cuyuna is part of the Iron Range, mm-hmm. and they're using the Iron Range for the bike trails, and it's an incredible economic driver. And so we're looking for a small piece. We have about 8 miles of trails left, and so we're looking to finish that as a bonding bill. Also, everybody's heard about Lake Mille Lacs, and so that takes up a lot of my time. Mm-hmm. We are trying to look at that in any kind of solution we can. We know it's the perfect storm that happened there, and it's really no one person or one entity's fault. And I'm not looking to lay blame at anyone. I'm just looking at finding a solution. Mm-hmm. And is that solution, we have the DNR is looking to co-locate on the lake with a hatchery. We're looking to put the Fishing Hall of Fame and the fishing records and museum, co-locate with them. We're looking at some tax abatement. We're looking at some walleye management. We are looking at money through Explore Minnesota Tourism. There's so many wonderful things to do on Mille Lacs, and we have a tendency to look at the negatives, but when you look at the lake and the wonderful things to do, there's golfing and restaurants, and the lake is phenomenal, swimming beaches and boating, and we still have great muskie fishing, bass fishing, northern fishing. There's so many reasons to go there. So we're trying to change that conversation, and that's one of my main focuses this year.
Has there been some movement in the legislature on some of these issues with Lake Mille Lacs? I know the DNR has made a few changes to try to make it a little bit more favorable for fishing this summer, but still catch and release for the walleyes. So,
well, remember that we had the Red Lake crash, we had the Leech Lake crash, and it's not just one answer, it's a whole plethora of answers, and we're all working on that. We've seen a great support in the legislature for doing that. Mm-hmm. Every committee we've brought the bills through. We have something tucked into taxes, something into finance, something in, they're all over. Everybody is really concerned with bringing that. It's the gem of Minnesota right there in its heartland. So we're really working hard, and we've had great support on both sides of the aisle for making that work.
All right. We'll bring in Representative Murphy now. Representative Murphy, you sit on the House Ways and Means Committee, and that's a very important committee. You're going to be hearing a lot of finance bills, or you have been hearing a lot of finance bills. Talk a little bit about Ways and Means, what that committee does, and then some of the bills that you're hearing or will be hearing.
Well, the Ways and Means Committee, if a bill has to do with money in any way, then it comes to Ways and Means from wherever policy committees and finance committees honed it to the way it should be before it goes to the floor. So the Ways and Means Committee has to approve the finances that are contained in the bill and recommend them for the floor. The first bill that's going to come up shortly is the claims bill, which is the people that, if there's no other resort, have a claim against the state in some way. Usually it's DNR or Department of Corrections, and with the Department of Corrections, mostly it's claims made by people that are in prison that have to file a claim and say their tennis shoes were stolen or their TV was broken or something. If something happened that was outside of their control, then they can make a claim. Usually they fail, but once in a while they are successful. But this year's claims bill, for the first time, we are having the results of the Innocent Project in Minnesota, that people that spent time in prison wrongly, and it was proved to be true that it was wrong, went through a court process, and a separate panel, after it was proven, first of all, that the people were wrongly imprisoned. Secondly, that there was great loss because of their wrong imprisonment. Thirdly, that something should be done about it, and the state has a responsibility. With those three things proven, then there was they were released from court, they were released from prison, and then there was a separate panel that decided how much money based on mental issues, based on lack of work or how much they lost wages, based on the type of loss that it was to them and their family. So then a separate panel decided how much money that should be. Those people came last week to the Claims Committee and pleaded with the Claims Committee to approve that amount of money, and talked about what happened to them and why they should be helped. And Claims Committee isn't authorized to change the award in any way. We either had to accept it or reject it. And we really were told we really couldn't reject it either. But we really, after we heard from the individuals that had been, we passed it, and that will come to Ways and Means tomorrow. Okay. So that's the first biggie. Then Ways and Means will also hear this week. They heard on Friday the preschool through 12th grade, K through 12, and preschool education bill. And that will come probably Tuesday to Ways and Means. And the Environment and Natural Resources Committee will be heard. They'll all come this week. All the big finance bills will be heard in Ways and Means sometime this week. We have meetings on Monday. We have a meeting on Tuesday and maybe Tuesday night, Wednesday, and Thursday too. So you're right, it's the big
It's the big week.
And Representative Simonson, for the other committees, their work is really winding down now. Now a lot of the measures are moving to the floor of either the House or the Senate. So now it's going to get busy on the floor of the two bodies. Is that correct?
It will be. We have Monday and Tuesday, the Jobs Committee will finish putting together their omnibus bill, and that'll get shipped off to Ways and Means. The Tax Committee, we're still hearing bills this week, actually. So you probably won't see that before next week, would be my guess. But I'm sure that we'll vote it out by Thursday, hopefully. But you're right. Now will be the time where the floor sessions get longer and busier, and more bills, in theory, will be heard. We'll see what the majority party wants to do and what they want to hear, but the committee work will be virtually done.
Senator Ruud, you're on the Natural Resources, Economic Development, and Agriculture Finance Committee, and we talked a little bit about Lake Mille Lacs, which I'm sure came up in that committee. But what are some of the other priorities or other things that committee has been hearing this session?
A lot of what we have done is, the buffer bill, and we passed that off the Senate floor. A lot of work went into that. We knew last year when we passed it that it had some problems, maybe some misunderstandings, unintended consequences. So we worked very hard to smooth those things out and to make sure that we had a bill that was really a bipartisan bill, and we passed that off unanimously off the floor of the Senate. And I think we did a good job in really clearing up those issues that had been created last year. So that was one of them. We've been really working on some really pollinators has been filled a lot of our time this year, trying to do a good job and making sure we have regulations that address those things. Water is the big issue this year in our committees, figuring out how we make cleaner water. We have the Water Commission, which I was sad to see that the House zeroed out last week, but we have a Water Commission that really addresses a lot of key water issues. We know that that's really pertinent to the governor. He's really stressed that this year. So we worked on a lot of those issues. So.
And you mentioned the buffer bill, and for folks that don't follow the process closely, can you explain a little bit what that buffer bill was and the changes that were made?
Well, last year we said that every ditch had to have a 50-foot buffer to it. And the question then what is a ditch? What qualifies as a ditch? Is it private? Is it public? How much land of a farmer's land do you take out of production by doing this? And so the question was really defining the buffers, exactly what can go in the buffer. Is it grass? Is it a cropland? Those are the things that we had to really define. We all want clean water. And so how do we do that? But it has to be economically feasible too. So those are the questions. It's throughout the state of Minnesota. One of the wonderful things is in greater Minnesota, our lakes are in relatively good shape. We have a lot of aquatic invasive species issues, but the water quality is in good shape. And so we send, from our watershed, we send it down south. So we have to make sure that when our water leaves our watershed, that we're not sending them our problems for them to clean up besides their own. So that was kind of the buffer issue, making sure there's not runoff from cropland or from anything else going into the water.
And Representative Schultz, you serve on agriculture policy. Has that bill now also come through the House? Is it going to be moved soon?
We did hear it in ag policy, and we were expecting it to come to the floor of the House last week, but they pulled the bill. I think they're still trying to negotiate the buffer language. The last thing I heard was that they were only going to want to apply to public ditches. So I think they're still trying to work that out. We may hear it on the floor this week, but we definitely heard it in committee. And we did talk a lot about pollinators, and I introduced some amendments to eliminate neonicotinoids and other harmful pesticides to pollinators from golf courses, because that was in one of the bills we heard, so I tried to make an amendment to help pollinators. That didn't succeed, but we heard bills trying to plant more pollinator-friendly flowers and vegetation, especially around solar panel installations, which they do a lot in Europe. and people were very supportive of that bill.
All right, Representative Simonson, another bill that was voted on by the House last week was a bill about fantasy sports. Can you tell us a bit about that bill and what happened?
Oh, that was an interesting discussion, another interesting discussion. You know, I have to say that that bill started out, it seemed to be a very partisan issue, but by the time that it actually reached the House floor and the final vote was taken, it seemed like they worked a lot of the concerns out. I know Representative Atkins worked very closely with the Republican caucus trying to come up with some language that would essentially protect consumers, but I ended up voting no on that bill, actually, mainly because of the concerns that I was receiving from a number of constituents just about the impact of, you know, legalizing additional gambling and, you know, what the impact is on Minnesota families and et cetera. And I hadn't heard a lot of input from constituents, you know, about please do this. So I ended up voting no, but it did pass, and I think it's relatively safe for consumer use, all things considered, but.
And isn't that the controversy, that whether this indeed is gambling or not?
Right.
That's the question. Some people say it's a game of skill, and it isn't gambling. So I'd imagine that's what the arguments were.
That's the argument if you want it to pass. That's correct. And it's a game of skill.
Representative Schultz?
But there are things that require skill that are gambling. So I wasn't sold on that argument that this requires skill, so it's not gambling, because there are situations where you're gambling and you need skill to do well.
Well, I have 2 fantasy football leagues that I enjoy immensely, and I can tell you I don't do it for the dollar amount. I think we all pull a couple dollars in, and we work really hard to get our team to the finish line, and it's really fun. My husband and I do it together, and we're an all-women's league, which is kind of unusual, and we call ourselves the Gridiron Ladies, and we have fun, and I don't see it as any type of gambling whatsoever on that score. Maybe some of the other ones require, but there is a lot of skill to picking teams and players and all those things. So I think it's a lot different than putting a quarter in a slot machine and there's not a whole lot of skill. That's totally luck. So there is a lot of skill in playing fantasy sports.
Is this like the FanDuel and some of these games that have popped up now where people are investing money online, like on a game-by-game basis or a week-by-week basis, just a little bit different from the season-long fantasy football that many of us have played over the years? Is that true?
Yes.
Many of us, as in?
That was myself. I think quite a few people do that. But I've never done FanDuel. I've only done the season-long games. So. Well, Representative Schultz, there were fireworks on the House floor last week. Okay, bad pun. It was a fireworks bill.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that bill, what it was, what happened.
It did pass, and it was to allow certain fireworks to be sold in Minnesota that you can now get in bordering states like Wisconsin and I believe North Dakota. These are a little bit more dangerous fireworks, so I actually voted no on that bill. And many other people voted no, but it did pass, so it might make it through the process, and the governor may or may not sign it, but I think they've tried this in the past and the governor did not sign it, so he may not.
Is there a companion bill in the Senate, Senator Ruud?
There is not a companion bill. It did not get heard. I understand that the governor did veto it the last time through, and I would certainly hope that it could be attached like any other thing on the floor of the Senate. That's where it would have to come through. It doesn't currently reside in any bill. I would hope that if we didn't defeat it on the Senate floor, that the governor would then again veto it. I cannot see that we need these big fireworks in the hands of children, and that's where they would be.
So Representative Murphy, it's an effort to try to open up the ability. A lot of people say, well, people are going to buy these fireworks from neighboring states anyway, so why not make them legal in Minnesota? Is that kind of the argument?
That's kind of the argument, and that we're if we don't pass it, then we're losing all that tax money and those jobs. Those jobs of the people that are standing in the tents selling the fireworks for that month or 6 weeks before the 4th of July and so forth. But people didn't talk, and they talked about safety a little bit, a little tiny bit, but it was just like the children are supervised the whole time that they might be using these fireworks, or there would be adults supervising them. And so it's just not true that it's as dangerous as it was. And I didn't, because I just knew it was going to pass. I didn't give my speech about the cows and the dog during the fireworks days and the times that the fireworks going. They are so scared of all the sparks that are flying and the noises that are being made by these illegal fireworks in Minnesota, as well as legal fireworks. And I remember when I was a kid, the dog shook for a week after the 4th of July. And so it was no fun shooting off those firecrackers anymore, and I didn't. And the cows would disappear way back in the pasture, away from where firecrackers were going off. But the people still say it's for the fun at the cabin. And it's the fun for the kids and the family just wouldn't have that 4th of July joy without this family fun. And I didn't buy it.
Thank you.
But the majority did. I think there was 50-some no's and 70-some yeses.
And Senator Ruud, coming from the Brainerd Lakes area, I'm sure there are plenty of fireworks displays around all the lakes in the Brainerd area on the 4th of July.
I find it interesting that Mary says they go up to their cabins and they wouldn't enjoy the experience. Well, I'm a permanent resident among all those cabins, and I can tell you on the 4th of July we can't even be in our home because it's really horrible. And when they get out of hand with the big illegal fireworks, our remedy is to, call the police, and then they put that down. If you legalize them all, there is no way to stop that from going on hours after hour after hour after hour. And so I think that it's really prudent not to. The people that are going to use those are going to go and use them anyway. But I think it stops the majority of people from using those huge fireworks. And even a sparkler burns at such a high heat that if you've ever seen a little child who got too close to that with big burns on their hand, I can't even imagine if we had one of the big M80s or something go off right next to them. So I just think for safety and public safety, and I think it's a bad idea to go there.
And Representative Simonson, as a firefighter, I imagine you have your own concerns about fireworks and things like that.
I do. And a couple of years ago, the state of Minnesota went through this process and essentially changed the law so that there was a certain number of fireworks that were made legal. And they're generally things that stay on the ground and they burn and they emit some sparks and showers and et cetera. But this bill that passed off the House floor essentially takes and puts back into law all the things that go high up into the air and that make large explosions. And I mean, over the years, I've seen enough fires started and enough injuries happen due to fireworks that it's just a bad idea. And it didn't make any sense because we know the governor's going to veto it if it ever got that far, and I don't think it'll even get that far. But it seemed like a lot of time was wasted on that particular bill.
All right, well, thank you all for chiming in on that one. I want to mention that you are watching Minnesota Legislative Report. It's your opportunity to call in with the question to lawmakers who are joining us here in the studio. So get those calls in right now. Like Tim from Duluth, he called in this afternoon. He's wondering, are there going to be any bills presented that include wage increases for people who work with adults with disabilities? Representative Schultz, maybe you would know anything like that has come up in committee?
Well, there was a big push to increase wages for those who work in home and community-based services, so in group homes and those, for those who have disabilities and their care providers. But that bill did not make it into the final omnibus bill. Mm-hmm. So unless the Senate passes it through, I don't know if it has a chance this year. But there is a lot of support on it from the DFL side. And we did hear it in committee, but it just didn't make it into the final legislation.
Now, Representative Schultz, the supplemental omnibus health and human services finance bill received committee approval. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill? I know that's a big one.
So that had a zero target. So that means that they had to cut spending from somewhere else to spend new money. And so the new money in that bill is about $40 million. And they cut the program, the state health insurance exchange, MNsure. So they took money from that program. Their idea, Republican idea, is to go to a federal exchange. They believe that would save money, although the task force I served on found out from investigative research from our consultants that it would actually cost the state more money to do that. The majority of the bills in that omnibus bill were appropriations of less than $250,000. So we heard a lot of bills that spent a lot more money, and they may have just provided a small amount of money to those bills we heard. They did some positive things for our community for Duluth is that there is funding for community health, mental health clinics, and Duluth is in one of those pilots, so that'll be a great thing. And then there is money to support a medical family practice residency programs. So the School of Medicine on the Duluth campus should receive some of that funding if it goes through. So there are a few bright spots in that bill, but some big changes if we eliminate MNsure.
Senator Ruud, you serve on the Finance Subcommittee on Equity. Tell us about that committee. What does that committee do?
Oh my. Well,
does that have to do with the fiscal disparities issue?
Yes, it does. I have to tell you, it's a newly formed committee, and we met for the first time last Monday. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we heard over 60 bills. They had 7 minutes a bill, which included saying who your name was, what the bill was, and all your testifiers. I think the process was really terrible. You can't process that many bills and do a good job with them in that short a time. It's something that needs to be discussed. But you know, we are on a 10-week session, and we all thought, you know, the frustrating thing for me is when I came into the session knowing it was going to be 10 weeks, my idea of the session was transportation, the tax bill, and a bonding bill, and not doing major policy issues and funding in this short time when we really don't have time to really do a good job with public input, because if you've been down to the Capitol, it's very disjointed. We have senators in one building, senators in another building. We're walking across the street. The House is doing business in a chamber that has no running water. They're using porta potties, and there's no public access. There's no way for people to even, other than on TV, to see the Senate chambers. We have some meeting rooms that have no cameras in them. I think this is a really poor time to do major public policy, and those things can hang on until next year. I think this subcommittee on equity, they're coming out with their major policy bill on Monday, and I don't know how you can possibly process 60 bills and come up with a major policy bill and spend $91 million in 1 week. And so there are some really important issues that we just touched on, because all they could say is, I have bill XYZ and this is its title, and we're on to the next. And so I think it does a disservice to those issues and to those people who came forward to the Capitol to discuss those issues, to give them such short shrift. So I would like to take some of those issues and really discuss them. We had the Family Leave Act. That's really important to Minnesota. And we're trying to do that as a policy issue in 10 weeks. And I think we should do a task force. Our businesses should address family leave and how we pay for it, how long it should be, who pays for it. Those are really valid issues. But to do it in this short session and then go home and say you did a good job, I still think we need to focus on transportation, on the tax bill, and the bonding bill. That should be our major focus. I'm sorry, I'm sure that's not the answer you wanted. But
No, I'm not looking for any specific answer. Representative Schultz, perhaps you want to chime in on that issue, and I'd like to hear from the House Democrats on the whole fiscal disparities issue and the time. Family leave was one issue I know is an important issue to Democrats. Senator Ruud was passionate about it.
So in the Senate, they created a special committee to look at racial economic disparities, and we created many, many bills in the House, and they didn't get many hearings. So this week, we have a subgroup of legislators in the House on the DFL side that are creating bills. I'm working on one to limit barriers to getting a driver's license and get some subsidies for the cost of driver's education, and looking at reducing the penalty when you get a court fine or fee that your driver's license is revoked. So trying to eliminate that, because people need a driver's license to get to their job and bring in an income to pay those fines and fees. So it's really a double-edged sword. So we're going to have special hearings this week and next week on racial economic disparities, and hear testimony and present our bills and get input, even though they may not go anywhere in this session in the minority.
And do you agree with Senator Ruud that the amount of time hasn't been sufficient really to look adequately into these issues?
Not really, but we did a lot of prep work before session started. So we were meeting as a subgroup and meeting with different groups, and groups have been to the Capitol to talk to us. It is a short session, and but it's such an important issue, and the governor's made it a priority that we actually could do some work and get things passed this session. I don't know if that will happen, unfortunately.
All right, we've got a question from Steve in Duluth, and I'll address this one to Representative Murphy first. And Steve is wondering, if Minnesota has a surplus, how much of it would go towards education, and how would you spend it? Representative Murphy, you're on education finance.
In the House of Representatives, the target for education finance, K-12, preschool, and K-12, was zero, just as Representative Schultz said. For all of human services, the target was zero. And with zero, there wasn't money. However, as Representative Schultz said, the House Human Service Committee found some money, and Jennifer Loon and the majority party in the House of Representatives found some money for K-12, and there was about $55 million of new money that will go into K-12 and preschool.
So with the surplus, Representative Simonson, where is that money being spent? Some is going into the state savings account per se. Not right now. I think we're looking at about a $900 million surplus as the last time we went through it.
I think the Senate and the House positions are very different, but just looking at the House provision, this is yet to be defined exactly, but the majority of the surplus will be spent on tax cuts. Now, what those tax cuts ends up looking like remains to be seen, but I get the strong sense that we're spending very little money in policy areas. They're going to dedicate a certain amount of money towards transportation funding, one-time funding, and then the rest of it will go into the tax committee.
Okay. Representative Schultz, Lonnie from Duluth is wondering, when is Minnesota Care going to get their payment plan cleaned up? He says he's experienced errors by Minnesota Care. Has there been any work on that this session?
There is a lot of work happening. So Minute is the IT part of the government that's really trying to take over from when they awarded contracts to private businesses when it first got started, and those private companies failed to create a platform, a web-based platform that could handle eligibility and enrollment, and that it did fail, and we haven't put enough resources, I think, to remedy the situation. They have a very long list, Minnesota IT, of things they need to do, and they are definitely making significant progress. So the last problem was that they weren't getting out the 1095A forms to individuals on time, and those have all gone out now, so people could file their tax returns for those who got a subsidy on the exchange. I think that in another year it will be a completely different experience for enrolling for a health plan on the exchange. So people can just be patient. In the long run, it's going to save the state millions of dollars if we maintain the exchange and allow economies of scale to happen, so we can use that same platform for medical assistance, Minnesota Care, and qualified health plan purchases.
All right. Senator Ruud, this week your committee, the Natural Resources, Economic Development, and Ag Committee, talked about expedited school trust fund land sales. People might need a little bit of education about school trust fund land. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit first, and then maybe what the committee was hearing.
Well, we're very excited because on a very bipartisan nature, we put together the School Trust Land Committee. And for many years at the school trust, at statehood, the school children were given a section out of, 2 sections out of every township. And the fiduciary responsibility was that money was supposed to go to the children. And over the years, it kind of got lost. The lands were sold, the lands were used for other things. And about 4 years ago, the legislature put forth legislation to say, we need to really focus on this. Where are these lands? What's happening to this? Where's the money? And so that was put forth. We now have this year, the governor appointed a school land trust director to take hold of that and to look at it. We did an inventory of the trust lands, where how much money they're making. Right now we have $1 billion in the school trust fund. So what we're trying to do with our new director, he's looking at all the legislation and what we do. It's the first time anyone's really looked at this and how it works. So he's going through the legislation and making tweaks here and there to make our fiduciary responsibility come true, that we are making money for the children, whether it's in mining leases or it's logging, or what are these lands being used for. Last year, every school child in the state of Minnesota got $30 from this trust fund, and it goes to the schools unencumbered. They can use it for whatever they choose to use it for. We're trying desperately to keep it that. We don't want anyone to dictate to the schools what they have to use that for. You need a computer, you need to fix the roof, you want to do something with your children, that's your money to use for what you want to use it for. So we're working through that. We are also working with the boundary waters and exchanging land, because a lot of the trust land is in the boundary waters, and we feel that the federal government should pay us for those lands. Not us, but pay the children for those lands. So we're working on a land exchange purchase with the federal government to solve that.
And Representative Murphy, I would imagine this is an issue that's close to your heart. School trust funds and being a former educator, that money going to work for the students?
Yes, and there was an amendment that went into the bill that allows this director that Senator was talking about to exchange some land, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a land that had trees on it, that we should be harvesting and replanting the trees, that kind of thing. And I was told, no, this is the kind of thing that he was hired to do, and it's his recommendation that this was a safe one to sell. And so I acceded to his greater knowledge than what I had. But I reminded them that we want this land, most of these lands, to stay in government ownership so that they can make money in the future, especially if they're in lumber country.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for your comments on that. Representative Simonson, we have a call from Tom in Duluth. He's wondering, will there be a state tax exemption for military retirees? Anything like that happening? You serve on the tax committee.
Right, and I think it's important to keep in mind that the 2015 tax bill is still in conference committee. So as time goes, that's last year's tax bill, still has yet to be passed. As time goes by, I am less optimistic that we're going to see a 2016 tax bill. But I will say that issue, to varying degrees of exemption, has a lot of support in the House on a bipartisan fashion. So I think the discussion is good and the groundwork is laid. So what comes in years to come, I have high hopes, but I don't have a lot of expectations for something to pass this year.
All right. Anybody else want to comment on that, Senator Ruud?
It was actually my very first bill that I carried in 2003. So it's something that I've been trying to pass for years and years. This is the closest we've ever come, because it's actually in the bill to be conferenced. So I would hope that this is the year to get it done. We talk about the budget surplus. That's dwindling. Every time the receipts come in, it gets smaller and smaller. We were $70 million short again this last report. So we have to be very cautious on spending money that may or may not be there, because we are a commodity state. And with lumber and mining and agriculture, the commodity prices are down. Ag land prices are down, which is a really sure indicator of where our economy is going. So I just caution everybody about spending this $900 million that I really think is sometimes foo-foo dust, because it may or may not be there. And so while this is a wonderful idea and we all support it, do we have the funds to do that going forward in an economy that's may or may not be strong next year at this time?
And by military retiree, I mean there can be a wide range. Some people might have put their whole career in the military, some might have served 5 years. So there may have to be some discernment as far as, or whether they were in active military action, or are there things like that in the bill?
I think it's a very comprehensive piece. Our veterans are so important to our state because they add so much to our economy. It may be something that we have to phase in, and not just do it this year. We might have to have a 5-year phase in. Same with Social Security, our taxes on Social Security. I don't know that we have the ability to do it all in one shot. We certainly want to be a goal. We're one of only 5 states that does that, but we might not be able to do it in a 1 year. It might have to be something that phases in so that our economy doesn't take such a big hole in the general fund.
All right, well, Representative Schultz, coming up this week on Monday, I think, the Northern Lights Express bonding bill is going to be heard. Talk about that. Northern Lights Express, the rail between the Twin Cities and Duluth.
Yes, so they're requesting $4 million in bonding funds to complete the engineering phase of the project. And this is it's moved forward because they reduced the cost of the project in half. So now it's about a $500 million project. And it has been put on the Minnesota Department of Transportation long-term plan, so that's a good thing. And they found that the rail service will lead to about $1.4 billion in savings over 40 years. And that savings as a result of increased productivity, reduced fatalities, reduced emissions, a significant increase in economic development and tourism dollars for our community. So I think it's a good project. I'm very supportive of it. It's going to lead to about 3,100 jobs right off the bat constructing the line. And I think it's going to be great for the communities that have stops along the way. And I think if we don't do it, we're going to be at a significant disadvantage as a community.
Is there any movement, Senator Ruud, for any type? I know there's a rail between St. Cloud and the Twin Cities. Any movement for anything that might be in the Brainerd area as far as a rail transportation?
I haven't heard of any. I think one thing we're really keyed in on is transit money, because people think transit money is for the Twin Cities, but transit money is for greater Minnesota too. In Brainerd, we have a small bus line that's really important for us to folks get to their jobs, and so transit money is not just for trains, it's for getting greater Minnesota around. So I'm not thinking that I've seen any in the large train movement.
All right, Representative Murphy, we've talked a little bit about the omnibus K through 12 bill. You talked about that just recently. Is there, you said they found some extra money there. Where is that money going, or what is it going to be used for? Is it $55 million, I think you mentioned?
$55 million of savings. It was found. It's going to be used for, it wasn't extra money. It was money that had been appropriated for something else, and they thought they would reuse it. There's $16.8 million in grants, $14.6 million in teacher recruitment and retention, because there's some areas of the state that are having a very difficult time finding enough teachers, and teachers of special needs and teachers of a specific subject that they can't find to teach the children in the communities. $9.4 million for broadband access, career and technology, and adult education. $6 million to support early learning and literacy. $7.7 million to reduce the disparity in revenue between metro and non-metro schools, and roughly $14 million in combined initiatives aligned to recommendations that came from the governor.
All right. One of the controversial bills that is getting some attention is the transgender bathroom issue. Representative Schultz, you want to talk about that a little bit, what's happening with that?
Well, that was a very heated debate in committee. There were a lot of people that were present when that bill was heard arguing against it, and I think it is a form of discrimination. And the states that have passed it, like North Carolina, our governor has banned travel to that state, and people are canceling events in that state. So I think it's a bad idea. It doesn't have support in our caucus. The governor said he would veto it. I think that people should be able to use the bathroom based on their gender identity, and we shouldn't treat people like a dog. You know, we need to treat people like humans, all people, and it's unfortunate that bill came up in Minnesota, and I'm very, very disappointed in the Republicans who introduced it.
Senator Ruud, you have a comment about that bill?
Well, I think it's an very important issue, but again, it doesn't have, it won't be heard in the Senate. The governor is going to veto it. I would vote for it. I think it has a lot of good points to it, but again, we need to get a transportation bill, a tax bill, and a bonding bill done. And when we start talking about transgender bathrooms and fireworks and all these other things that really don't need to get done this session, I think we lose focus about what we were sent to do this session. And, you know, transportation is a big issue. And in rural Minnesota, greater Minnesota, we need help. Our roads and bridges, I can't tell you how many that need to be fixed in Senate District 10. And so that should be our focus. And while we disagree with that policy issue, I'm not sure that we should be taking up in a 10-week session another major policy bill. We should be focusing on what we were sent to do in this 10-week session.
We've got just a few minutes left. Maybe we'll finish up with just some advanced stuff. Representative Simonson, what are you looking forward to this week? Are there some bills of importance in your mind that are going to be heard this week?
Actually, I do. I have a bill up in tax committee on Wednesday, I think it is, that would provide a portion of a financial incentive program for a private developer should they choose to purchase the old Central High School site. And this would be a state sales tax exemption for any private developer that wanted to come through and redevelop that property should the ISD 709 choose to sell it.
Representative Schultz?
So I'm going to be on the radio tomorrow morning in the cities talking about the genuine progress indicator. So I have tried to introduce this bill and get it heard. That's failed. I did introduce it as an amendment to the state government finance omnibus bill, and it didn't pass. But it's a way to determine whether or not our government policies are effective and what we do over time in terms of passing legislation, whether or not it improves the well-being of Minnesotans. So it's an index that's used by many other states, and I'm hoping someday Minnesota will start tracking the same data. Because it measures things like the cost of homelessness and the value, and determining how income is distributed across individuals and households in the state. So there are over 54 different measures in the GPI that will be very helpful to track over time and to compare Minnesota to other states on the well-being of our individuals that live here.
Senator Ruud, what about for you? I'm sure it's going to be a busy week.
Well, Thursday is the final bill deadline for all the finance bills, so we have a lot of work coming up. But I'm going to end on a little lighter note. We have the governor's fishing opener in Senate District 10, and we're all looking forward to it. It's on Big Sandy Lake. That group of folks have been working tirelessly to make sure that comes off. It's a big economic developer for that area in McGregor, and we're excited to have it there. We welcome the governor, and y'all come and have a good time when we're looking for a great fishing opener.
And it looks like the weather is going to cooperate. We should have.
Oh, the weather gods are wonderful.
Representative Murphy, Ways and Means, busy week for you in that committee.
Busy week, and we have the airport bill is up tomorrow, as well as the Northern Lights Express bill in Transportation Committee. And so we hope also that we'll get some more indication of where the bonding projects for northeastern Minnesota and all of the Arrowhead region, where they are in the limbo that they have been in. We know that they have all the information, that the bonding committee has all the information that they need, but when is the decision making going to begin? Because not that it hasn't begun with gathering information, but sometimes we hear what's possible and what's not so possible, or what needs revamping, or maybe looking at it again and saying, can you come down a little bit, or that kind of thing. What kind of things that they're favoring or not favoring. Maybe we'll get some more indications of that in the next 2 weeks.
All right, well, Representative Murphy, Senator Ruud, Representative Schultz, Representative Simonson, thank you very much for your afternoon spending it with us. We've run out of time this week on Minnesota Legislative Report. I'd like to thank all the lawmakers who make this program possible, and thanks to everyone who called with their questions today. Please join us again next week for another edition of the program. For the crew here at WDSC TV, I'm Greg Grell. Have a great evening.